I've adjusted the mics in the room.
Let's start over.
Start over? Oh,
Start over.
okay.
Just one mute button.
No problem. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Trinity County Planning Commission, April 24th, 2025. Before we get started, we're going to do a little pledge allegiance again. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to open it to public comment. During the public comment period, members of the public may address the Planning Commission on any matter not listed on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. Okay. Public comment in the room, please. I apologize. Technical difficulties. Oh, there he is.
Point of order real quick, that Duncan just needs to disclose.
Hang on, Ms. Wright, we have a point of order.
Commissioner McIntosh needs to disclose if there's any other adults in the room with him at his location.
Thank you, Commissioner Fleiss. There is no other people in this room with me.
Thank you, Commissioner McIntosh.
We don't use the
Commissioner McIntosh, can you please make sure you speak as loud as possible? We're having some difficulty hearing you. Please.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you. Ms. Wright.
Off tangent on non-agendized but unnecessarily or nobody really wants to be here. I want to be here going in a public service and tough kind of decisions, but I think that all the respect needs to go each way. It's that was something I'm weighing on my mind.
Thank you, Ms. Wright.
Go ahead, Commissioner McIntosh.
Apparently, I'm not able to hear the public
Okay.
comments. The microphone must not be connected to the Zoom call, and if I can't hear it, I'm assuming
We're having
nobody
trouble
else.
we'll put the meeting on pause for 15 minutes, Chair.
Sure. Yes, please.
I think Duncan was saying that microphone is not active. That's why he couldn't. Oh,
I can hear staff and I can hear my fellow commissioners, but not the public comment.
Thank you. Technical difficulties. Thank you.
Is Commissioner McIntosh said he could hear staff and commissioners, but not public.
Don't know why. Check the plugs.
So is it paused? Miss Debbie, is it paused now? Is the meeting paused? Yes. Apologies.
Okay.
For clarity, it's a 10-minute break.
Yeah, no, 2 hours and 10 minutes.
So they are brown butter cookies with caramel and sea salt on them. Yes.
You are.
For Bella's last meeting with us.
I know. I want to cry.
I almost called you guys because I was like, I don't want Pat to make cookies because I'm making cookies. I can't compete with Pat's cookies.
So yeah, it says it's on. And I cranked it
I
up
don't
to
know. We're gonna have to
volume.
go and find out where she's going.
I say, what's going on?
I don't know. I just know she.
Duncan, can you hear us okay now?
Yes, I can.
We're still having trouble hearing you.
Duncan,
It's-
can you hear this?
It's very.
Yes, I can.
Hey, Duncan, when you're talking, can you hold your mic like up closer to your face off your headphones?
Yes, is that better?
No. Oh.
Mm,
Hmm.
yeah,
Is
it's
that
not
better?
here. That means it's not only Duncan.
Remote for what?
Can you hear me fine?
Let's not go too loud and fast.
Try it now, Duncan.
How about now?
I
I
don't
don't
think.
think it
Didn't change,
changed.
didn't change at all.
It did not change? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take it off my headphones and just see if this other speaker works better. How about now?
Still the same.
It's still the same?
Try again, Duncan. I turned on another mic that I'm supposed to leave off.
Yes. How about now?
Nope,
No?
the same.
Still the same.
It is the same. Hold on.
I don't believe it's you, Commissioner McIntosh.
Mm,
Oh, it is you. Yep, it's you.
let's see here. Can you hear it any better now?
Still the same, Commissioner McIntosh.
And it's muted or is it faint or is it?
It's just faint. We'll have to
It's
just be
just-
really quiet and focus on what you're saying.
It's loud and clear on the internet.
Interesting.
Good to know.
You know, I have,
So was Larry Glass's voice just as loud as mine, or was it louder?
Larry's was louder.
Yeah. Larry's was louder, Duncan.
Larry's was louder. So the public can hear me just fine, but not the chamber.
Apparently.
So that makes me think that it's possibly not on my side where the interference is happening.
Chair battle.
Third, 3 minutes, figure it out.
Oh, don't worry.
That's it.
I'll help you on the back end.
There's just not a lot of options.
The last one was contagious, is that what happened? Our last meeting?
It's worth trying.
Contagious?
Well, we have to see his face.
No, let's just say after 9 p.m., I'm not a useful human being anymore.
Because it's the room.
Because it's not linked, to me, it doesn't sound like it's going to.
We went to a friend's house for Easter, and I'm used to eating at like 5 now.
So
As
the
soon
other
as I
guy,
get home
Larry,
from work, we
from
eat
Safe,
dinner.
he was louder.
So I don't
Adrian
have
Keys, are you able to give us a test?
then
See what you sound like, please?
go up to that-
Yeah, sure thing. I don't know if you can hear me, but I can certainly hear
Yeah, but
Duncan and I can hear the board also. And I
Can't hear
don't
him.
know about
Yeah,
the
I can't
voting.
hear Adrian.
Can't hear me either.
I can hear Adrian just fine.
So people on Zoom can hear each other.
It's a room issue. It's the Zoom room issue.
Mm.
Zoom of the room. Oh. Look at you. Well, we might get some feedback, but you could try it. Worth trying. Where was the?
Married, he's almost has a friendship.
Oh, right on.
Seven.
Okay.
Or
remove this issue. Whatever. Is there any way to turn up the speaker volume in here? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Try again.
Duncan, try again. You guys have Viper?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Oh, really? What did you do?
Bella works some magic.
Thanks, Bella. I don't know what we're gonna do without you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright, for your public comment. Thank you. Any other public comment in the room? Any public comment on Zoom?
Adrian?
Hey, thank you, Chair and staff. Just a quick comment. It reflects on one of the future agenda items I'm really excited about. But I think that as we consider the tiny house alternatives and these things around, trying to cope with housing shortage and all, we should also possibly at this point consider alternative sewage disposal and gray water systems and adopt those in this ordinance. Lots of places have them. And there's plenty of, proven to be effective pieces of equipment and methodologies out there. And I think, along with saving water, it could also help people develop properties where, they have various setback issues or one thing or another. It's a way for people to get a property developed in an affordable way and save water at the same time. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keys. Any other comment on Zoom? So we're going to close public comment and begin with our regular calendar. First item is to approve the minutes for the March 13th and March 27th, 2025 meetings. We have a motion.
I motion to approve.
I'm wondering, Mr. Chair,
Absolutely.
so in my planning commissioner report, I was trying to clarify that my Zoom attendance was met the just cause criteria due to a contagious illness. That was on March 13th. If we can have that clarification in the record, just because you can only have 2 excused absences a year, and so I wanted that noted that was one of my excused absences. Or not an absence, but in a Zoom call. Mhm.
Will you amend your motion to include that?
I will amend my motion to include that.
I will second the amendment.
Is that a motion for both?
Sure.
Yes.
Commissioner Flights, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harper, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Duncan, you will be excused because non-presence. Thank you.
Moving on to item 2. Cannabis Appeal of Director's Decision P-24-12.
Chair, may I make a motion, then also a disclosure?
Absolutely, please.
I would like to make a motion that for this evening's meeting that we conclude no later than 9:15 p.m. and that any items that were not addressed tonight carry over to our next meeting.
Sounds good.
I guess I'll second that. The next meeting on May 8th.
Are our next scheduled meeting. So if it is to be May 8th, then yes.
We have a first and a second, so we're,
We have a second already, I believe.
Are you ready,
yes.
Carol?
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Guess I have a question or a discussion before we vote. So I can be here on May 8th, so any items continued to May 8th, I can consider, but if it's the second meeting in May, I won't be here, so I wouldn't want to continue things to an indefinite date. So is it possible to specify a date?
Sure. Yep. So if, so the motion will be to conclude tonight's meeting at or before 9:15 and to continue any items that are not addressed until the May 8th meeting.
So I accept that as a seconder. And then in that case, I vote aye.
Commissioner Flights,
Aye.
Commissioner Harper,
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh,
Aye.
Chair Barrett.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then per county council's advice after our previous meeting, I've been advised to provide any disclosures on any items in advance of the items being heard. Therefore, I would like to disclose that I have had conversations after last week's meeting briefly with both Mr. Morris as well as Mr. Greenwood, and then have spoken with Supervisor Cox. One of the items that we had discussed at the last meeting that I've also since discussed with county staff is the definition of site, which has been provided based on the 17.43 commercial cannabis cultivation license regulations, based on what's available on Muni Code, based on the conversation that we had last month on the on-site question. And so site has the same meaning as premise as defined within this chapter. Premise means the designated structures and land specified in the application that is owned, leased, or otherwise held under the control of the applicant or licensee where the commercial cannabis activity will be or is conducted. The premises may only be occupied by the county commercial cannabis cultivations license type. Multiple additional commercial cannabis activities, i.e. nursery, distribution, manufacturer, may exist on the same legal parcel. With that, I would like to make one further motion that for this evening's conversation, that we limit staff presentation and any public comment to only include new information that was not previously presented or not previously heard in our meetings for this item.
Thank you.
I would make the similar disclosure that since the last meeting, I have spoken to Mr. Morris to obtain more information about this agenda item.
Thank you for your disclosure. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Do we have any discussion? Do we need to discuss anything on that motion? Okay.
If I may, Chair,
Absolutely.
I reviewed and watched the last meeting, so I feel privy to all the information that my fellow commissioners were, that was available to them. So I'm fine with just new information coming forward.
Thank you, Commissioner McIntosh.
Commissioner Harper, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Flights, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair Barrett,
Aye.
thank you.
Do we have any new information from staff on this item?
Well, given the motion that was just passed, I guess I won't do a brief overview of the project details. So what I can offer is that you all should have seen a memo attached to the staff report, which contains a letter from SBI to Bao Li, who is the applicant for this CCO. Other additional information, which is not included in the staff report, I guess could be summarized as, what was presented previously. You'll have to forgive my reference to what we talked about in the past, in terms of there being a new well application for the old unfinalized well on the subject APN. That well is still in an incomplete application state and has not been finalized. So those are the two new pieces of information. I would also like to point out that given the letter from SBI and in discussion with County Council, I would like to offer an updated staff recommendation. And that is that we continue this item to a date uncertain pending the outcome of the civil proceedings related to the location of this well. If you have any technical or clarifying questions for me, of course, I'm happy to do my best to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Blubani. Does anybody have any clarifying or technical questions for Mr. Blubani?
Mr. Chair, so could you repeat the updated staff recommendation one more time?
Sure. The updated staff recommendation is that we continue the item to a date uncertain pending the outcome of the civil dispute.
Thank you. And the civil dispute is in regards to what?
The location and/or ownership of the currently permitted well, that the well permit, the final well permit indicates that it's on the subject APN, which is the CCL applicate APN.
So to clarify, you're in some way disputing SPI's saying that the well is on their property?
I'm not disputing anything personally. My recommendation comes from acknowledging that given that there is the potential for a civil dispute over this piece of infrastructure, that I think, it's most prudent for the county to not take action and allow for the civil dispute to be remedied through the courts. And I don't know if Margaret cares to opine on that, but I did discuss it with her a few hours ago. So.
Thank you.
Does anybody need clarification from legal? No. Any other questions for staff? Thank you, staff. Can we go to public comment, please? New public comment? Any public comment in the room?
Lisa Wright, Lewiston. Duncan, can you hear me now?
Yes, I
Again?
can.
Okay, awesome. I would, Flora is the consulting agency for Baoli's application and an authorized agent. And I would like to concur with the staff recommendation at this time, that this be continued to a time uncertain following the remedy of any civil dispute. There certainly will be a dispute to the letter presented.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment in the room? Okay. Mr. Morris? Yeah, you're the appellant, correct? You might wait, might hold off, please. Apologies. Any other public comment in the room? Any comment on Zoom?
Tom? Tom, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Tom, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Tom, go ahead.
Hi. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Tom Belenko, Douglas City. I am the representative of the appellee, who is also the applicant. I do agree with staff's recommendation that this be continued based on the new information. I will say, as I always do when something like this happens at the last minute, that I think it would behoove the commission to establish some procedure for establishing the record on these appeals. There was a time when it seemed like the commission only did variances. Now we're doing a lot of appeals. And since what you're doing with these appeals is making a decision based on a record, it helps us all, certainly the participants, but also the commission itself, when we have a record that staff can comment on, that you can digest, and then you can make a ruling to pass along either for the board or wherever else it goes. So anyway, I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. We could just say, hey, 10 days before the meeting, you have to have appellant has to be done, 7 days before appellee has to be done, whatever staff needs. I think that would help us all. But anyway, that said, I do think we continue this until some resolution on the well issue. I would think that assuming the well that is not under the well of contention, but the other well, if that becomes permitted, I think we could bring this back with that. Otherwise, when we have some resolution, and I don't necessarily know what that resolution might look like with the well of contention, as I have raised last time, I think there is, no matter where it's located, there are statutory limitation guidelines on that. And I think certainly Sierra Pacific is beyond its opportunity to object to that location as a trespass. But anyway, that's not for your consideration. That goes over to the other building next door. So I do think staff's on the right track here, and I would hope the commission moves forward with a continuance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blanco. Any other comment on Zoom? Oh, we have one in the room.
Keith Greenwood, Sierra Pacific Industries. I just thought that at the last meeting, we talked about that the applicants were revising their application to point towards a well that was on their site. There were some discrepancies in the mapping and a few other things. And so if they're just waiting for a well report, I thought that the well had been investigated. I'm not sure that there's been there must be an incompletion to that well report investigation. But I think, to Tom's point, switching gears in the middle of a process is not very good for both them or for us. And so for them to, or the appellant. So it would be nice if they were clear on which well they're counting on for this permit. So that's just my question.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone left on Zoom?
Good.
I'm going to close public comment. And can we hear from the appellant, please?
Bob Morris, Browns Creek Road Improvement Association. There's really not much, my hands are kind of tied to say anything because it's been said before, other than at the last meeting, it appeared that applicants were pulling away from the well, it's being called the well in contention, and we're going to try to work on a well that's definitely on the property. And we've not gotten the official results of those, but I understand they're in. Drew, you said it's 1 gallon per minute was the volume on the well test?
I think our only options are to continue it. I don't think county wants to really get involved with information they haven't shared yet.
Okay, can I just ask a question then? I've been told through this whole process that there's a 3 gallon a minute minimum for a licensed cannabis operation. Is that true or not true? Can anybody speak to that?
Mr. Ruplani, do you have any information you might share? Is that a figure accurate?
That is the standard that has been applied. I think it is a topic that we will be discussing more in the future. But yes, informally, I would say that is the standard that has been applied.
Perfect, thank you.
I guess I just want to get that on record. So thank you for that. And there's not much more I can say. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. We bring it back to the commission for a motion and discussion. Commissioners.
Okay, well, for discussion purposes, I will move that this item be continued to a date uncertain pending the resolution of civil issues.
I'll second that.
So we have a first and a second.
And for discussion, Chair, I would appreciate some clarification of what the civil issue is, because at the last meeting, we had a lot of discussion about this and we left it with, the applicant going to pursue the well on site and documenting that it provided sufficient water. And we gave them, I thought, substantial time to have that well test done and submit the data to the county. So I'm unsure why that is still unresolved and why now we're throwing in a civil issue. Because there's two issues. One is a technical one. Is there actually enough water on site with the old well? And now we're throwing in a civil issue, kind of going back to where we were many, many hours ago, which is the well that they were proposing to use on or off their site?
Yes. So I'll follow up that there is nothing preventing the applicant from providing an alternate land survey showing that that contested well is on their property, and they have not done so. And, sure, the county didn't ask for it because they don't have to, but there's nothing stopping them from providing it themselves as part of this discussion and part of this conversation. So I'm going to make a subsequent motion that rather we deny this application and that it is not continued to a later date.
Do we approve the appeal?
Yes, you approve the appeal and deny this CCL license.
I would, I would second that subsequent motion.
Furthermore, I would add to discussion that there's nothing to stop the applicant from coming back with an appropriate well in the future and having a license. But we don't need to continue to tie up staff time and planning commission time on this issue. They can resolve it themselves personally and have the time to have their civil suit or whatever else needs to happen without it being on the docket for our staff, and they can focus on other projects.
Well, I have a technical question. Since you made the first motion, and you guys, what happens to your first motion since you seconded the second one? Because Commissioner McIntosh seconded your first.
So the way the rules of order work, we would vote first on the subsequent motion. And depending on if that was approved, then that's it. If that subsequent motion fails, we go back to my original motion and then consider that.
And this is Margaret Long, County Council. I don't know if you can hear me. I
Yes,
do
we
want to say
can.
that, okay, I just want to make it, if the question was, can the same person make both motions or be part of both motions? The answer is yes. A single commissioner can make multiple motions.
Thank you very much for clarification, Ms. Long. So we have a motion and a subsequent motion. Do we have any discussion? Or do we want to vote, commissioners? Commissioner McIntosh? Thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting that county council has and staff has these recommendations after this last meeting, which seemed like the disputed well is connected to the APN of the applicant, and so this civil case is out of our jurisdiction. Or yeah, so that was surprising to me, but I definitely would want to follow our legal advice. Furthermore, they have had ample opportunity to provide a secondary well report, but that is the only thing that's holding it up, is them providing that. And so if this gets denied or this appeal gets approved, then do the applicants have an opportunity to reapply, or is this permit now finished, or this application finished?
I'll answer that question.
Mr. Bubani?
Commissioner McIntosh, yes, this application is finished, and yes, they can reapply in the future.
Thank you. I guess the well of contention, the SPI well, if you will, the one that's being litigated, my reading and interpretation from the information in front of us and staff recommendation is that the applicant is looking at other options, not exploring the well of contention at this time. I don't think we need to close the door in their face. I think continuing it to a date uncertain leaves the door open for them to continue. Is there a cost associated with if this closes and having to reapply and go through the whole process? Is that a mitigating factor? I just don't understand why we'd close the door and say, nope, you have to go through all the hoops again. If we can just continue it to a date unknown, to me, that seems more agreeable and more in the line of business as opposed to.
If the appeal is upheld, then the way that code reads for small cultivation license applications is that an initial half down of the total license fee is required upon submission. So they would be required to pay that $2,500 again to submit a new application.
Well, to me, just me talking, I think it would be unfair to make them have to pay that $2,500 just to reapply when there is an opportunity here to say we continue it to a date unknown to allow them to get their house in order. To me, that's an incentive to not close the door, but that's just me. Commissioners?
Would the county have the choice to waive under this situation? The discretion?
As best as I understand
No?
that, that fee waiver request would need to go before the Board of Supervisors.
Mr. Chair?
We potentially have a third motion here.
I motion that we move it to a date uncertain or until they get either their litigation handled or a different well.
I'll second that motion.
So we have a third motion, first and seconded.
So to understand, so a date uncertain or a different well? You mean the on-site well? Is that what you mean?
Well, I think the on-site well, the existing well, the 71 well, I think is what it was.
But sorry, but there you go. You're saying it right there. That's the on-site well.
Yep.
And so you're saying that the other well, which they applied for in this application, the contested well, is off-site. And so that's the thing. They applied with the off-site well. They have not produced what we've asked them to produce for the on-site well. And so they're not meeting the requirement for the permit. They don't have water.
And if I might add, Mr. Belanco pointed out that, it's almost a moving target. It's like you can't figure out what you need to provide and a time frame and get a straight answer, and the goals keep changing. And so to a certain extent, I totally understand what he's saying. I mean, the agency I used to work for, you had 30 days to respond, to provide information. You had 90 days to do this. It was all very clear. I like that. But now we're saying date uncertain. It could be a year from now. It could be 2 years from now till civil stuff gets resolved.
Oh, and Mr. Belanco stated when asked at our last meeting, okay, so if both wells come out right, what are you going to use? Both wells.
Yeah. It's just, I just think we need to fish or cut bait here. We need to make a decision. And so I don't like the keep dragging it out thing.
I don't see it as that. I see it as they have recognized there is a civil dispute with the SPI well, and there's an opportunity for them to repair and to maintain the existing 1971 well. I believe the applicant has been very open and honest and said, hey, we understand there's an issue. We understand it's a civil issue. We're just asking to keep our foot in the door so the door doesn't close so we can get our house in order. I see it. I see your point, but I see it differently. I see that the applicant is saying, hey, yep, we understand there's a civil issue. We're not bringing it before the county. We're not slowing the county down. We're not adding to the workload. We're going to work on getting the existing well in order. And if we do at that time, we'd like to come back and get our license. I don't see the issue. It's not like it's something, an anchor around our ankle. We won't see it again until they get their house in order.
Is the actual applicant, the owner, the individual interested in this, not the representatives present this evening on Zoom?
Is the applicant on Zoom? Perfect. Thank you very much.
Chair, if I may.
Absolutely.
So there is a well that is part of their permit that is, or their permit application, pardon me, that is connected to their APN. They have a permitted well that is connected to their property. That is in dispute. That is a civil litigation. And based on the recommendations of staff, we continue this. The applicant has supported that continuance rather than pushing forward on an application which checks all the boxes. There is a well connected to this APN that they are respecting the civil suit and asking for continuance of this. Furthermore, they have an ulterior well that they would rather not use, but because of the civil litigation, they have offered to utilize this. This would lead to the potential for amendment of the application to include this secondary well. I mean, an amendment to include that well, which is already on their property, is a very small amendment. It is what, changing the site plan 10 feet, 20 feet. So I think that it is realistic to continue this until that dispute is taken care of. And furthermore, I think that is a consideration to the community and to SPI to do so, because this application does not necessarily have to do with SPI property or their neighbors. They check all the boxes. So I think a continuation is a courtesy to all that are involved.
So I would
Thank you.
add that they also did not present this evening to say that any movement had been made on the well on site, which would be the path of least resistance, right? To have that well become certified and maintained. They did not provide any update on that this evening as to what we asked at our last meeting for them to move forward on this.
I mean, why would they? They have a well connected to their APN, right? Like there
I'm
is a
sorry,
push.
Commissioner McIntosh, can you repeat that, please?
I mean, I understand that we have asked them to provide this alternative, which is, you know, the well report for the alternative well, and that has not been provided yet, which is a shame. But that well may or may not be sufficient for this application. However, their application has a well that does provide sufficient amounts of water that is connected to their APN for this application. So denying the or approving the appeal based on not providing a well report for a well that is not necessarily on this project, I think is not appropriate. I mean, maybe there's something that I'm missing here. I was not present at the last meeting, but there is a well connected to the APN. And furthermore, how much staff time does it take to continue to a time uncertain rather than approving the appeal and just denying the application? I don't see that being a burden on staff.
Agreed. And we have certainly allowed people extensions. Weaverville Business Park, I think we've given them a year extension. So the fact that this is coming back to us within a month, the applicant and the staff are agreeing, and it doesn't cause an undue burden to county staff, and it allows us to encourage business in our community as opposed to discourage it. Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Mr. McIntosh, Commissioner McIntosh.
The motion provides a way forward as long as certain parameters are followed. Either
Correct.
the civil litigation is settled in favor of the applicant, or an alternative source of water is provided, which should be provided when they can. But I don't see why we need to be punitive to an applicant who is looking to provide or to have a business here in our community. I feel like these prior motions are punitive, and I don't understand why.
Thank you. Any other discussion for the commission before we vote?
Could we have for the record, have the motion repeated so we know exactly what we're asking them to do?
The subsequent motion is to move it to a date uncertain pending litigation outcome.
That was the
Didn't you
same
also
thing as the
include
first one.
Or
It was all,
Or a subsequent well. Sorry.
So would it be better to say resolving civil issues versus litigation?
Yeah.
I don't know, if I'm not a lawyer, I don't know if they have to actually get in litigation to resolve a civil
I see your
issue.
I see your intent.
if we just,
and possibly clarify what civil suit we are referring to in the motion.
I don't know if county council or the county want to even stir that water up as far as what potential litigation there is. I think it's plain and simple that we have a motion to say we will address this pending the results of upcoming litigation. I don't know that we need to split hairs on it. Litigation's litigation, right?
And the second part of the motion is is what related to the water supply, the wells. So we would continue it to a date uncertain pending resolution of civil issues or documentation of,
Satisfactory well report.
of the existing older well.
Yeah,
That's
of
right,
an
that was-
appropriate amount of water sufficient for
yeah, documentation of a water supply.
Does it really have to be like civil litigation or litigation or just resolution that there could be a separate agreement made or something else come to that, you know, it doesn't go through litigation. And so I don't want us to get tied to that term of litigation
Yeah,
and just
agreed.
say that the contested well issue it's somehow resolved legally. I don't know.
If we
Anyway.
carry it forward to a resolution of water supply.
So I'm trying to figure out what I'm voting on. I'm sorry. So we would continue it to a date uncertain pending resolution of civil issues, or,
county council referred to it as a civil dispute.
okay, civil dispute, or documentation of adequate water supply.
Satisfactory well report.
Or provision of a, okay,
May I propose some
yes,
alternative
please.
language to capture that? Could be, or permitting of additional legal water source,
Oh, yeah, there you go.
but adequate water supply is also a reasonable way to characterize it.
So permitting of, say that again, permitting of,
Permitting of an additional legal water source.
is it an additional one or just permitting of a
Adequate.
legal water source, adequate legal water source?
Well, that kind of circles us back around to this point of contention, which Commissioner McIntosh, I think, has described quite well, in my opinion. There is an existing permitted well associated with the APN.
But it's not on site.
That is the point of contention, and
Yeah.
that is the civil matter that we're referring to.
Okay, so how about if we are permitting an appropriate legal water supply, right? Because if it's,
The reason I chose to include additional is that it clarifies that we're asking for something additional, whereas right now we'd be circling around on the same topic, which is the point of contention.
got it, okay.
With the additional water size, we would also have to have the amended site plan, correct, or no?
The
How
site
would that
plan has
work?
already been amended to include the old pending well permit, or old well with a pending well permit.
So a motion that would be in accordance with county council is to continue to a date uncertain pending the outcome of the civil dispute, then, or an additional appropriate water supply.
Permitting of an additional legal water supply.
Not to
Okay.
confuse things further, but legal water sources don't all need to be permitted.
Oh.
So forgive my suggestion to include the word permitted.
So additional appropriate water supply infers that it is able to be used for this license.
It's appropriate.
So, but wait, I'm really trying to
Mhm.
get this, sorry. So it would be continue to a date uncertain pending the outcome of
The civil dispute,
the civil dispute or permitting
an
of an
addition,
additional water supply?
not
or-
permitting, or an additional appropriate water supply is provided. Staff, does that suffice for this application? Or
Well,
for an application of an appropriate water source or a legal water source, a water source that can be used for this project?
I'm not sure I caught the second part of if you had a question there, but documentation might be a good word to include.
So additional appropriate water supply, you would recommend that a documented would help provide clarity for this? Is that what you're saying, staff?
Yeah, because if they were to propose some potential alternative water sources such as rain catchment, the statement that we are going to use rain catchment would not be sufficient. We would require additional documentation and calculations in order to determine whether or not that was that would provide an adequate water source.
Okay.
Chair, if I may,
Absolutely.
one more try. To continue to a date uncertain pending outcome of the civil dispute or documentation of an additional appropriate water supply is provided.
Do you accept those modifications, Commissioner Harper?
Commissioner McIntosh.
Mr. McIntosh, I saw your thumbs up. You approve of the amendments to your motion?
Yeah, that was articulated well.
Thank you, Commissioner McIntosh. Okay. Can we vote?
Okay, I believe we're on the second subsequent motion. Commissioner McIntosh, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harper, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Flights, how do you vote?
No.
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
No.
Chair Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Second subsequent motion passes 3-2.
Thank you. Moving on to item C. Establishing code section 15.26 regarding movable tiny homes, DEV-24-03.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Senior Building Inspector Cody Smith. So the item before you today is a proposal to establish code section 15.26 regarding movable tiny homes. A little background on this, in my time with the building division, this has been the #1 ask from the members of our community. You know, we typically get a lot of different things that people want to do in terms of, especially with new housing and trying to come up with some alternative ways. But this one has been a really big one. So, yeah, basically, we really wanted to do it because it's giving an affordable alternative to, you know, meet the construction costs that only continue to rise. I mean, I don't have to tell you guys, everybody knows that. So yeah, basically that's what we got going on. If you guys have any questions, I'll be here. And Bella had a comment or she wants to add real quick.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Point of order, I apologize. I forgot to disclose. May I disclose quickly?
Please do.
Okay. So Cody and I did have some brief discussions, and so one of the items that came up is that the grading ordinance would still apply. Oh, sorry, that might be to it. That's to the later one. My bad. But that we did discuss some of the foundation requirements, as well as with. Oh, sorry, trying to connect all my dots, so many dots. And also spoke with Debbie about appropriate street markings under the addressing component as well. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your disclosure. Ms.
Uh,
Heidke.
Yeah, I just wanted to add Bella Hedke, Senior Planner. I've been here for 7 years. from the history that I know of the building department, I just want you guys to be aware that this is the first time that I've ever heard of, precursing me in the 7 years that I've been here, that someone from the building department is taking the initiative to listen to their community and respond with action and bring an ordinance forward. This is beyond his additional work duties, so it's not usual. So I just kind of wanted to highlight the positive effort that's taking place here. And I'll leave you with that. And any questions we're both here for.
Thank you, Ms. Hickey.
Are we allowed to ask Cody questions now, or do we need to wait? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Public comment?
We can go to public comment and then
And
have
then
staff
ask-
discussion.
Okay.
I'd like to open it up to public comment, please. Any public comment in the room?
Just a quick one, Lisa Wright, Lewiston, Chair Commissioners. I commend Cody on putting this together. I think it's an important option for people because we certainly have a housing shortage. And I think it also opens up the potential for some, more remote places to have access and for people to get out and experience nature and that kind of thing. So thanks, Cody, for bringing this forth. It can help in many ways. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Any other comment in the room? Any other comment on Zoom? I saw a few hands raised.
Adrian?
Thank you again, Chair and Commissioners. I'm really excited to see this. I think it is a big step in the right direction. Our communities are in a consistent housing crisis. It's holding us back. Like Cody said, it's been something he's been hearing a lot. I know in some of the general plan, economic development component stuff, one of the leading reasons it was difficult to develop businesses here was because there's no housing for employees, let alone housing that isn't like objectively substandard. So some new homes, small homes, movable homes. It's an interesting idea, coupled with other creative solutions. I think is a real big step in the right direction. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Keys. Any other comment on Zoom?
Rhoda?
Sorry about the delay. Rhoda Kane from Trinity Center. I also think this is wonderful and super important as the world is changing, and this is more important than ever before and super important in our county. I just had a couple of comments, and since the county has changed to this new system for the agendas and the staff reports, it's almost impossible to actually read everything because of the way it's not mobile friendly. But it looks like there was a letter in there from the Trinity Center fire chief talking about or acknowledging. So I'm not really sure if it's in there because, like I said, everything's so hard to access now with the new system. But it said something about there not being 2 second floors, not allowed to have second floors or lofts, which I don't know if anybody knows anything about tiny homes, but they almost always have second floors and lofts. And so I think that should, if that's in there, a limitation on not having a second floor, I think it'd be really important to get that out of there. And then another thing to keep in mind with the tiny home movement is almost all tiny homes come with composting toilets. So thanks.
Thank you.
Matt Jefferson?
Hi, Chair and Commission, Matthew Jefferson from Trinity Center. I am in support of you guys passing this. I appreciate the planning department and building department and everybody that was a part of this that brought this together. And would like to reiterate everything that everyone else has said, and that I hope you guys can look at the Trinity Center Fire Chief, Mr. Dwight Stewart, his letter. That pretty much says everything that I would like to say. So I'm very much in support with what Mr. Stewart said, and I hope you can see his comments. Thank you for your time.
Thank Thank you for your comment. And just for clarity, we do have that letter here in our packet. So thank you. Any other comment on Zoom?
No.
I'm going to close public. Ms. Hickey?
Sorry, I forgot one thing that was more technical in nature. I just want you guys to be aware that while it's in the draft version, there is a program in our housing element that is for a tiny home ordinance. So in the first time in Trinity County's history, we would be completing a program before we actually have to complete it, and not after. So it's just very exciting, and I forgot to add that in the beginning.
Thank you, Ms. Hickey. We've closed public comment. Does the commission have any technical? Yes.
Chief Stewart did show me the letter that he submitted and explained some of the concerns. The draft ordinance that went out to the fire departments for comment did have things in there like you couldn't have a loft. It had to be 8.5 by so many feet. There was things in there that we were like, why is that in there? And Cody fixed it. So the draft that was presented to the planning commission does allow lofts and things like that. So thank you, Cody. And then I have questions, but I think Amelia can first.
Okay. So Cody, with this and per one of the letters that was received in the memo, can a tiny home replace or is it required for one of these parcels to already have an existing dwelling, permitted dwelling for occupancy on it before a tiny home is added? Or can a tiny home be sufficient as a dwelling on a parcel?
Cody Smith, Senior Building Inspector. So yeah, the idea is that these can be allowed as single-family dwellings, and then they can also be allowed as accessory dwelling units. So it's not that you have to have the single family first. This could be your single family dwelling on your property, like your primary residence.
Okay. And then, are there any, so it's stated in the document, it does say that it has to meet the setbacks and everything for that zoning. But are there any setbacks for how many, first of all, are there any limits to how many may be on any type of property? Or any based on acre limits, such as, if you have a 2-acre parcel versus a 20-acre parcel, do we have any restrictions on to how many they can have, anything other than setback limitations?
Yeah, so basically with following zoning, right, we have to make sure, one, does it meet setbacks for the property? Two, you've got lot coverage. So lot coverage is going to kind of really control how many you're going to have at that moment as well. And then on top of that, we have state regulations for tiny homes that show how many you can have and things of that nature that would have to basically meet that as well.
And then I'll just add for ADUs. So say your question was how many tiny homes can you have? If there was a vacant lot, you could have 2 because you would have a main and you would have a detached ADU. There's other types of ADUs you can have. You can have a converted, you could have an attached, and you can have a junior. But I don't think that the tiny homes would be able to meet those 3. So I think that answers the question.
Okay. And then, so then that's 2. So there's no concern about a larger property turning into more of a mobile home park style venue with 6, 8, 10.
Sorry. No, what you're speaking to is more of a tiny home community. And that's usually handled in a different type of ordinance and jurisdictions.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Full?
So the other issues that Chief Stewart brought up were kind of related to fire protection in kind of larger parcels, more remote areas. So I'm hoping you can kind of walk me through the sequence. So someone comes in and applies for a building permit for their tiny home, and at some point, would CAL FIRE go out and say, your driveway is 2 miles long and you got to have turnouts and turnarounds and all that kind of stuff? Is that part of the building permit?
So yes, that's yes. So they are actually in our referral process. So at this point, for any building permit, we have a referral process where basically all of the divisions that are involved get a referral. So if it's a cannabis related structure, cannabis gets a referral. But CAL FIRE does get a referral for each of those structures. And Ryan Cash and I have actually been on a lot of conversations lately. He and I are going to perform inspections together to ensure that everything that's within our fire safe ordinance is being addressed, as well as the stuff on their side of the field. So yes.
Okay, so you work with them and they tell you what they want to have in order to get the building permit, and then someone puts the tiny home on site and they have requirements to do the skirting and all that kind of stuff. At what point then, where's the time frame in terms of when someone can move in versus when they have to have their water storage and all that road improvements done? I mean, I'm worried that people will move in on these large parcels out in the middle of nowhere and not have water or access if there was a fire. So,
Yeah, so the way that the county code reads is actually that before they can get a certificate of occupancy, those items need to be signed off.
okay.
So whether it's addressing the roads, the water storage, essentially those items need to be addressed and signed off before the certificate of occupancy can be issued. I've actually got one coming up on the 30th that I'm going with CAL FIRE. We're going to be looking at all these items that we're talking about.
Great, that's great. That's very reassuring. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Harper, Commissioner McIntosh?
So with the addressing, are we also going to require substantive addressing such for emergency responders to easily find these new units?
Yes, so that's part of the requirement with those CAL FIRE standards is there's actually a checkbox on there for addressing. So it's got to be all posted and for emergency services.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff, for all the information. Yeah. I love tiny homes. If I have a choice in Airbnbs and I travel a lot, I always pick tiny homes. Feel like Gulliver's Travels. Well, can we bring it back to the commission for a vote, please, on a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we continue this to the next meeting such that we can thoroughly review this and consult with our jurisdictions just to make sure that we are putting forth a very valuable ordinance to the Board of Supervisors such that it's in a form that would be ready to move forward swiftly and not get moved up and sent back and moved up and sent back and moved up and sent back. So my motion is that we continue this to the May 8th and provide any additional direction to Cody as to items to consider for modifications prior to moving to our next item.
If I could, I would just add, please be clear on those requests so we can move on this item.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second or a subsequent motion?
I'll make a subsequent motion, although I feel that I have an advantage because the draft ordinance was sent out to fire departments, and then my fire chief said, I sent in these comments, what do you think? So I did get a chance to see it. So I'm going to move that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution PC 2025-05 to adopt a California Environmental Quality Act CEQA determination that the project is categorically exempt from further environmental review under CEQA guidelines, section 15303, Class 5, minor alterations in land use limitations, and recommend to the Board of Supervisors that a new ordinance be passed to allow the construction of tiny homes in Trinity County.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, who's second?
That was me.
Thank you.
And my only discussion is, we did get a comment about clarifying whether they're tiny homes or movable tiny homes. Should we make that clarification before we send it on?
It would probably be an easy one to put, because most of it, what it was, is that there's some sections that refer to them just as tiny homes and then others as movable. So that would be a fairly easy fix, just to go through and make it all movable. So it's all meets the same intent.
Correct. So yeah, in the ordinance as proposed, it states tiny home, but then in the actual sections, it moves into movable tiny homes. I would ask staff that that would be corrected so that it's all consistent with movable tiny homes. And additionally, I guess my question, so here we're approving the construction. Are we actually having people construct these on the wheelbases at the properties, or are they just moving constructed tiny homes onto a property? Or are we doing both?
This is more for movable tiny homes in terms of you're purchasing this tiny home. It meets the requirements for Title 24, and that you would move it onto the property. So this isn't necessarily that we'd be constructing a tiny home onto, say, a frame. That would be a whole nother discussion.
So then we would need to correct our motion so that we're not allowing construction of tiny homes, we're allowing placement of tiny homes.
Placement of tiny home on private property would probably be,
Why do we have to have why do we have to have the stipulation that it has to come in on wheels? I don't understand the purpose.
would it be better to maybe create a definition of what a movable tiny home is? Like, I guess clarify more.
Well, I mean, the whole purpose is to encourage people to be able to affordable housing, homesteading. I don't understand why we would, right out the get-go, when this is a wonderful project, move the goalposts yet again, just like we just talked about in the last one. Tiny home is a tiny home. Why do we need to make it that it has to come in on wheels?
Well, so the foundation requirements are specifically to movable tiny homes, not to permanent tiny homes that don't have wheels. And so if we're going to say that they can have tiny homes that are not on wheels, then we're looking at a different type of construction and we're looking at different regulations that would apply. So this ordinance was constructed for ones on a wheelbase.
Right, that's what I understood. This is just for movable tiny homes. And if you had a different type of tiny home, we'd have to have a different ordinance.
Or a different type of tiny home would fall under the normal building codes.
Well, and if you read, so in section 3 for the general requirements under B, it's a movable tiny home shall be. So it's licensed and registered with the California Department of Motor Vehicles or California Department of Housing and Community Development. So basically what that means is that we're making sure that it's gone through all the requirements that it needs to have to via the inspections that they do inside of their warehouses and whatnot. Now, that's not to say that someone could try to build one on their own. They would just have to get it signed off with all these requirements. But this is specific to movable. It's you're purchasing it, you're putting it on your property.
Yeah, that's what I understood. That's why I wanted to make that clarification throughout the ordinance that we're talking about movable tiny homes.
And I mean, there's nothing to say that somebody could build their own as a project and then submit the certificates and application for it to then be installed on their property, permitted to Cody. It's just, I just had concern about construction. We're not permitting construction of them. Somebody can construct it as their hobby on their own and then go through certified, but we here are looking at the placement and utilization of the tiny home for occupancy.
So I guess just for me, is there a separate ordinance going to be presented for not on wheels?
So right now, you could do a tiny home right now and construct yourself and wouldn't need to have to go through any of this ordinance. You would just have to meet the minimum requirements. This is because we're talking about, it's like the best way I can explain it is it's like an RV trailer. So an RV trailer through our ordinances is not allowed on private property. This is taking something that is licensed as an RV and it's giving it it's okaying the use to then bring that to the property and make that a permanent residence. So that's the difference. Like to construct a tiny home, you would just pull a building permit and you would meet all the requirements that we have to for anything.
And you could use the owner-built rural dwelling
Yep.
criteria to build a tiny home.
Is that K class?
Yeah, the limited density rural owner builder.
Okay, so there is an opportunity in Trinity County to build a
Really
traditional
small house.
tiny house.
Yeah, yeah.
I love
Yeah,
it.
we've had that for a long time. Just most folks don't want to go that low.
And if I may, Chair, for clarity,
Yes, please.
a contractor has the right in Trinity County to build a tiny home on the property that would be placed pursuant that it has to be on wheels and such, but it can be constructed on site by a contractor, correct?
Yes, he's nodding.
Okay.
And I'll add, I mean, I've talked to a couple contractors who are thinking of starting a local business manufacturing these. So they could be, manufactured locally and wouldn't have to haul them great distances. And so, yeah, I think the expertise and the desire is out there.
I just love tiny homes. So we have a subsequent motion. Do we want to vote or is there any more discussion? I guess we're voting.
Chair Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harper, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Flights, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Subsequent motion passes per staff recommendation.
With the caveat that they clarify that they're movable tiny homes.
Thank you. Moving on to item 4. It's amendment to TCC Chapter 15. Staff?
All right, Senior Building Inspector Cody Smith. So what you have before you is an amendment to Trinity County Code Chapter 1504 to add new definitions and building permit exemptions that conform to the California Building Code, including the exemption of agricultural structures. So a little bit of background, this is something that was brought up by former Board of Supervisor Dan Frazier during the December 17th Board of Supervisors meeting. And basically it was brought back to staff to make some edits to it to try to give it a little more. So essentially what the definitions were that were added were specific to the agricultural structure of what essentially that means. And then as for the other items that were added for what is exempted from a permit, those items were taken directly from the California Building Code, 2022 California most current edition. So essentially what we were doing is we're bolstering that up so that the community understands what is exempt from a permit, because right now we don't really have a lot of people that know exactly what you don't need a building permit for. So it was really to try to bolster that so that we had an understanding. And then as for the agricultural structures, this is something that we've been asked a lot for. The comment that I have received probably more than anything is that, well, Humboldt lets us do it. Mendo lets us do it. So basically what I did is I reached out to these other jurisdictions, their building officials, and asked them to provide me any information they had in regards to how they developed their process for ag exempt structures. So a lot of what you're going to read in here is kind of a conglomerate, and then it's everything that we needed for us specifically to address the issues that we had kind of moving forward. So if you have any questions, I'm available.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. We have public comment, please. Any public comment in the room? Oh, yeah.
Lisa Wright, Lewiston. I haven't really had a chance to go through it. I'll just be frank, so I apologize, but I'm certainly in support of ag exemptions. We've been working out for a number of years, the concept, moving it forward, as Cody said, surrounding jurisdictions do allow for it. It's rather typical other than Trinity County. So I'm in support of anything that, helps people in the agricultural space, save money, be more productive, that kind of thing, make their lives easier. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Any other comment in the room? Any comment on Zoom?
Matt?
Hello, Chair and Commission. Pretty excited about this topic. Matthew Jefferson in Trinity Center. So I'm going to talk to this from my side of being a certified vegetable producer. We're a small family farm up here in Trinity Center. My first ask is that you guys add the wording row cover into everything or into this ordinance. One of my examples is going to be, I have a 50-foot wide by 100-foot wide vegetable garden. Most of it's tomatoes. When you get rains during production, especially in like August and September, if they hit the blossoms, it destroys the blossoms, and I can't sell tomatoes for like 1 or 2 weeks. So you have to have row cover to cover them. Right now, I would have to put them every 6 feet. And it's just kind of like crazy that I have to do that when I should be able to just put hoops every 20 feet, even though they're 4 feet tall, to put frost protection or cover from rain, but I'm not allowed to do that because row cover's not in there. If we had, like with our cherry trees, late frost kills blossoms, so you have to be able to cover them because you won't get any fruit. And you need hoops because heavy wet snow can come in the spring, break all your branches. But my second ask is that you guys take hoop house out of there and that you make a hoop house an ag exempt building when it has no electricity, no plumbing, it's a dirt floor. But the example is like a 20 by 50 foot hoop house. If I fill that with tomatoes, I'm going to make $800 to $1,000 profit on that. It's a $350 permit. 7 years in a row, it's taken me 4 to 6 trips to town to complete it. That's another $150. But that's 50% of my profit. That's just not sustainable. And every like 90% of all rural counties in the United States these are considered ag exempt structures. So I'm hoping we can kind of look at that. So to add row cover and to get rid of hoop houses. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt.
Adrian?
Hey, thank you, Chair and Commissioners. This is another one. I'm really excited to see this. It has been a long time coming. Both this and the last item are things that people have been talking about in the county for a long time. Down in Hayfork, we've got a community garden that is beginning to really flourish. We're doing a lot of different projects there. It's really a neat project. But the idea that that facility, which is entirely volunteer based, would need to pay a permit fee for a temporary, hoop house, whatever structure name, it just holds it back. And so I really hope that this passes, and I really hope that that people can take advantage of it and continue to do, beneficial agriculture for the community here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keys.
Tyler?
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. Tyler Thompson from Burnt Ranch. And I also just wanted to chime in with support for developing this sort of an ordinance in the county. I've permitted stuff through it as a contractor in Oregon, and then I have done it locally here in Humboldt County, and have not come across a whole lot of issues, like looking farther down the road with the structures, so long as they were vetted through the planning department and met, property line setbacks, zoning requirements, and so forth. I know Cody mentioned that he was, kind of cutting and pasting some of the language from Humboldt County's ordinance. And when you look at a lot of them in other jurisdictions, they're all somewhat similar in a lot of ways, really focusing on that land use, whether you want to call it entitlement or just authorization through the planning departments to make sure that they're getting placed correctly on the property, and then beyond that, kind of taking the requirements of the building department to oversee it beyond that, and just easily issuing the permits for a reasonable cost. And I've seen like quite nice ag structures get built under these barn style buildings and so forth that people were really happy with in the end, and didn't seem to have long-term negative consequences for the jurisdictions that permitted them. So anyway, I appreciate the building department getting this in front of you guys, and really hope that it can go through in a way that works good for everybody that's going to try to utilize it, as well as hopefully allow the county to permit stuff in a way that prevents more unpermitted structures. So anyway, I appreciate you guys working through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler.
Rhoda?
Hi, Rhoda Kane, Trinity Center. I mostly just kind of want to reiterate what Matt said, that, this hoop house permit eats a large portion of my minuscule farm profit from a small vegetable farm up here in North Lake. It's takes a lot of time, and it costs a lot of money, and if this is for agriculture, it'd be really cool if we could actually support small farms in this. Thanks.
Thank you, Rhoda. So I'll close public comment. I'll bring it back to the commission for a motion and discussion. And technical questions for staff, please.
For clarity, hoop houses are included within this exemption. The reason it's listed is just for clarity when reading it, but hoop houses are included.
Thank you very much for the clarification. Any questions for staff?
Yeah. So I'm probably opening mouth, inserting foot, and telling you I've been doing something illegal for decades. But so a 120 square foot or smaller structure like a shed is exempt. Okay. I never read that it's for general storage, because I have a shed that we use for when we used to sell at the farmer's market, which we don't do anymore. So maybe I'm not illegal. We would package up our, herbs and stuff that we would take, and we would hang our beans. We used to sell heirloom dried beans. So we were packaging and processing ag products. I thought that was exempt, but how is it exempt now?
So basically the way that building code reads is, so it's any structures that are 120 square feet or less that are for, and it clarifies the general storage aspect of that very clearly. It's a big chunk of that. But then on top of that, you've also got if you're adding electrical to that structure, now you're kind of talking about a different one. So the big thing with the processing and stuff like that, as this kind of comes in, is really specific to that commercial aspect, if you will. So if you're, like say, let's use a hay barn as example, that maybe you sell that, hey, you can use that structure for that. Where we're trying to come with this is the human habitation of that structure. So if it's something where we're just doing some, like I'll use drying cannabis as an example. If you're putting cannabis in there and you're drying it, that's not that human habitation aspect that we're talking about. What we're really talking about is structures that if you start processing in terms of packaging, now you're talking about accessibility requirements through ADA. So that's where with this ordinance, we had to kind of really look at it and go, what is that minimum part where the commercial cannabis can utilize this, but then still make sure that we're ensuring that ADA and these other things are met depending on what the use is. So the letter of intent that's included with this is a really big one, because that's where you're basically telling me, this is what I use the structure for, this is when I use the structure, and then based on that letter intent, that's where I can say if this structure is considered exempt or not.
But the way that it's defined, an ag structure, so agricultural buildings can't be used for something where you're processing or packaging stuff for retail sale. So if someone is putting eggs in an egg carton in a little tiny building, they need to come in and get a permit?
That's how it currently reads.
Yeah, that's how it reads.
So the best way that I can explain it is that my job is to interpret the building code based on how I think it goes, right? So with this one, I had to take a deep dive and I had to look up the Webster's dictionary. You know, what does processing mean? So when I looked that up, what I came up with is that processing essentially is where you're taking a item, let's say, and you're changing the structure of what that is. So eggs, you're not really changing the structure of an egg. The egg comes out, the egg's done. Processing, if we're talking about cannabis, I'll just use an example because it's the easiest way to do it. The way I've kind of gone about everything with cannabis in terms of processing is that processing is a broad term.
Does it
There's-
include drying?
Yeah, so processing, when I ask the cannabis division essentially what processing is I'm asking them about drying, trimming, packaging, harvest storage, and then we talk about the actual cultivation aspect of it. So then within those, I had to go, okay, which of these functions essentially is changing what that product was?
But the thing is, so you're exempting ag buildings as long as you're not processing or packaging within them. And then you can have less than 120 square foot buildings that are only for general storage. So again, I'm stuck with, I'm packaging my herbs, or I was. I am, and I mean,
No, you're,
you go to the
I
farmer's
understand.
market, we used to sell like rosemary,
Yeah.
and all these herbs. Okay. Or I'm drying my heirloom beans, so I'm processing those. So where do these little tiny guys like me that sell at the farmer's market fit in here? I can't process or package under the definition of an ag building, and I'm not qualified to meet the one-story detached accessory structure less than 120 square feet. So I'm kind of stuck.
So essentially, if you don't meet the requirement for the letter of intent, then what you would have to do is you would permit that like a normal route. So it wouldn't be exempt from getting a permit if it doesn't fit within that. So like if you wanted to talk about yours specifically, we could talk about it at a later time. And
I'm giving up, I gave up my farmer's market sales.
Cody, can I just have a clarification? So if somebody wants to build a barn that's larger than 120 square feet, they could not do that under this?
this they could, because they would meet the letter of the intent of it. So if they come in and fill out the letter of intent and say that they are wanting to build this barn to house hay, then at that point, they would be exempt and they would just need to meet the zoning requirements from that.
May I ask for a clarification?
Please.
I just, I'm not sure if I was missing something or I wasn't following along. But my understanding of the discussions that Cody and I have had to your specific question, Commissioner Fall, drying is not considered processing.
Oh, okay.
Am I correct in my understanding?
Okay.
Okay.
That is correct.
And then to add, just to, for a little educational, make sure I'm on the same page, correct me if I'm not. If you were to take your rosemary and grind it into a powder and then package it, I think the changing the form, right, from going from the stable plant to a powder, that is processing. So that would, yeah.
I think what's going to happen is you're going to have a bunch of people like me that have their 120 square foot or less sheds, and they're going to be using it for little tiny stuff, and you probably really don't care. But having said that, the fee, the $84, is that appropriate to put it in the ordinance or in the building permit fee schedule? Would that be a better place?
Yeah, the fee schedule probably is where that needs to be. And so for clarification, that number is based on my hourly weighted rate. So I just said that I don't think it's going to take me more than an hour to look at the paper and determine what we needed. So that was trying to keep that cost. But yes, that it would fit to be habited to our adopted fee ordinance.
And then any project that is large, such as, say you need the roadway, a driveway to the barn, or if you are building a larger structure to house your equipment. So I come from the Midwest. I think combines and other large equipment. I know it's not super prevalent, but we have other kinds of large equipment, dozers, etc. And so if they had an agricultural property and they wanted to build a very large building to store their very expensive equipment, that could be suitable under this, but it may fall under requiring a grading permit if they needed to regrade the property based on either its contours and or they're moving more than 800 square feet of dirt. Is that correct?
800 cubic yards.
Cubic yards. Thank you.
Yeah, so this wouldn't exempt them from any other requirement that we would have with zoning or anything like that. They still, and that's why we have that letter of intent to make sure that all the potential issues that we may have can be addressed through that letter of intent.
And would that letter of intent look at like lot coverage? Because so rural residential is one of the zones that where this would be allowed. So potentially you could have a small rural residential 2-acre parcel that would have a zillion ag buildings. You'd look at the whole setback and everything else then.
Yeah, so again, anything within zoning, which that would be a zoning requirement based on the zone. So they would have to adhere to the lot coverage as well as setbacks.
Okay.
And then for the appropriate zoning or the allowable zoning districts, would it also be possible to include SUDs that have an ag designation? That was just, I know that there are some throughout our communities that are SUDs with ag designations, and think that that would be an appropriate zoning district to add.
I'm looking at Belle and she's nodding her head.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner
I have-
McIntosh?
Yes. So would like TPZ and Ag Forest be appropriate for this as well? Commissioner Flights mentioned bulldozers, equipment for harvesting timber on your land. Is that, I mean, timber harvesting is agriculture, is it not?
Yes.
Yes.
Waiting for staff.
I'm just trying to.
Commissioner McIntosh, to confer what Bella was saying is that she's looking up Unicode for TPZs because they're fairly protected zones.
Okay. And also, Cody, do you see any challenges or concerns with including row covers in this ordinance?
I think I'm probably going to reach out to Matt and talk to him about that specifically because we already have some ways that I think he can go about doing this and not need any building permit as it is. I think I just need to speak with him, but no, row covers to me would fit within the same frame that we're talking about with agricultural structures because it's an agricultural structure.
Yeah, Commissioner McIntosh's question I had about row cover or crop cover was my concern. So any clarity you can offer on that, Mr. Smith, would be appreciated.
Yeah, so currently we have what we call mini hoops that do not require a permit right now as we talk. And those you can't be any bigger than 6 feet wide and 6 feet tall. And they can be as long as you want. So in my eyes, that would probably work as a row cover anyway, because it almost sounds like that would be the ideal idea. But yeah, this through that, we could address the row covers and have that in there as well. And it does I believe in the definition, it also talks about so constructed to house implements, hay, grain, poultry, livestock, or other horticultural products. And then where we put included but not limited to hoop houses, greenhouses, and woodsheds. So those specifically are in there as, I think, for clarification, just because I wanted to be sure that everyone understood that greenhouses and hoop houses and woodsheds were part of it. But there's going to be other structures where people could come in, and kind of plead their case, if you will, that if they meet the intent of the ordinance, then that's where we can work with them to do that. So a row cover 100% would fit within that.
What would be the required setback between the structures, just under existing code? Or if you had multiple of these structures, could they be touching or adjacent or need to be 10 feet apart? How does that work?
Right. So where we could come in on that one would be if these structures have drywall or something in there, because you can get, predominantly, it's usually 6-foot setback from structure to structure. Now, if you were to have, say, a firewall in between one of those structures, then you could get closer than that. But that's about the only way that you can do it is by doing that. So with these structures, if you want to do that, you can. But we would still be looking at that for structure setbacks just as well as property line setbacks and other things.
Commissioner Fall?
So when I was listening to Matt's comments earlier, I thought he said that he could only put them 6 feet apart, 6 feet wide. So I think the mini hoop house doesn't quite meet his needs, was what I was hearing him say, that he could only make them 6 feet wide and he needs them to be wider than that.
Gotcha. Okay.
In other words, make it more effective for him to
Yeah.
do his business. Yeah.
And that's the idea behind this ordinance is we're really trying to find a way that everyone within the whole county, regardless of what type of agricultural use you have, can use this ordinance to really bolster your, in times like this where things are as expensive as they are already, if we can find a way to help people with their businesses and try to find ways to do it in the right way, I think we're finally taking a huge step forward. So that's really the big one. And I think that letter of intent really kind of helps.
Oh, what a strange idea. Thank you. Any other discussion?
Can I add on the zoning
Yeah.
point? So Duncan asked earlier about TPZ, and I looked up TPZ, and I think it would be appropriate to add because you're allowed to have grazing and other agricultural uses as a use permitted by right. So they would still have to follow, the specifics of their zoning code. I also think that agricultural forests would also be appropriate, just with the educational caveat that it's fairly restricted depending on your size and other things that would be dependent on a registered professional forester making a determination. So by no means does this ordinance exempt you from having to meet everything that is required in the specific zoning codes. So if you happen to meet it, then you're exempt. But yeah.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Bella. Chair, if I may.
Please.
Yeah, so I'm considering these row covers and just like putting my mind into, the way that if for peas or just early crops that are in rows, and each row in a agricultural area is not separated by 6 feet apart. There is, a raised furrow and then a trench, or it's just, it's just continuous. And so with this, so if you have like 10 rows of peas, for instance, and the rows, the center to center, are 6 feet apart, let's say, would this ordinance allow for each of these rows to be covered without setbacks in between the rows? Does that make sense, Cody?
Yeah, that makes sense. I see what you're saying. So the best way I can say it is when you're looking at structure to structure, predominantly, if it doesn't require a building permit, it's not something you really look at. So in this case, with it being exempted because of the agricultural use, we wouldn't be looking at that 6-foot separation. So the bigger one's going to be property line setbacks, and then all of the other zoning requirements that would be required at that point. So in that situation, I believe it would work, yes.
Okay. And just for clarity, if a farmer came to the planning department to talk to you and conveyed that 6-foot high was not tall enough, that 8-foot high for his raspberries or whatnot is something that is needed, then that is negotiable, that is available based on your discretion.
So the 6-foot ones were created as a way to get out of pulling hoop house permits is what it was. And the reason, honestly, Jim's the one that created that policy, so I can't speak too much to it in terms of how things were created, the way they were. But we wouldn't hold anyone to that 6 feet within this agricultural exemption. The 6-foot by 6-foot is specific to what doesn't require a building permit. That's separate from this. So if you fall under this ordinance, at that point, you're good to go. You can do your all together and all of that.
So if you have dwarf fruit trees that are 9 feet tall, and you want to cover them in the springtime with a remay or some type of frost cloth that's 9-10 feet tall, that is within this jurisdiction, within this ordinance.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Any other questions for staff?
Chair, may I offer a comment?
Please.
I just wanted to point out that based on the discussion, where I think the intent is to include agroforestry, into this ag exempt ordinance, that in the letter of intent, it refers to or other horticultural products. So I would suggest that agricultural or horticultural products be included, because horticulture does not really, the definition of horticulture doesn't extend to forestry.
Good advice. Any other questions for staff, or do we have a motion?
I just wanted to make sure one more thing too. Did everybody get the memo for the two? Okay, I just want to make sure that that's in there. That definition is really important.
Thank you.
I will make a motion that we adopt resolution PC 2025-06 to adopt the California Environmental Quality Act determination that this project is categorically exempt from further environmental review under CEQA guidelines section 15268 ministerial project exemption, and recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the updates amendments be passed to allow for California building code exemptions, including an agricultural exemption, new language, and a letter of intent, with the following modifications, such that we include the items in the memorandum dated 4/24/2025 entitled Agenda Item D, Amendment to TCC Chapter 15, including the updated definition of agricultural structures, as well as updating section 11. D dot zoning clearance required as stated, while also adding to the allowable zoning districts, TPZ, ag forestry, and SUDs with a designation for agriculture, while amending that the fee association shall rather be tied to the fee schedule than a specific value. Are there any other modifications that we need to make?
I'll second that.
I'll
I think
second.
you got it.
Okay.
Mhm.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion, or we'd like to move to a vote?
For clarity, was agriculture included in addition to horticulture
Yes, it was.
in that motion? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Flights, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harper, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passed 5-0 per staff recommendation with 3, 4, and 5 included updates.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5, community development, amendment to County Code Chapter 15, Section 15.04.080.
Point of order, Chair. May I make a motion that we take a 10-minute break?
Absolutely. 10-minute break.
In the back of the truck. But yeah. Emily. Emily.
Getting there.
We were going to discuss item E, amendment to County Code, Chapter 15, Section 15.04.080.
All right, last but not least. So Senior Building Inspector Cody Smith. So what you guys have in front of you now is essentially an amendment to 15.04.080 to include both the California Code of Regulations, Title 24, California Fire Code, and the California Code of Regulations, Title 24, California Green Building Standards Code. So basically the requirement is when we get these new codes, we are supposed to then adopt those codes within X amount of days. So initially, I think it was 2001 was when the other codes got all in there and adopted. These two were left out. So basically what this is we're trying to get this in there so that we have it. And at that point, it's in our ordinance. We're enforcing it. So one thing I do want to kind of mention is that a lot of the stuff that's in kind of both of these are in other aspects of the code. So the fire code's a big one. There's fire stuff all over our building codes. This just gets a little more beef to it where you're really looking at commercials, kind of a big one, and some aspects like that. The green building standards codes, the biggest one that I see it's a benefit for the community really is that we're talking about recycling materials and things like that on construction sites. It's essentially having contractors or owner builders tell us where they're going to be taking their things through demolition permits. If we're demoing an old structure, this is going to tell us, hey, are these items actually going where they're supposed to be to the correct landfill? Are they going to reuse this? So it's a lot of the stuff is there, but now we're just making sure that we've actually got it in our ordinance and it's adopted, good to go. So if you guys have any questions, let me know.
If I could just add, this would also allow us to adopt what's called MWELO, the Model Water Efficiency Landscape Ordinance. The county is currently out of compliance with the state. I had to submit a report today that was pretty bare bones. That's a legal risk, and we just wanted to close the loop on that. And yeah, so I appreciate the effort that's going into this.
Thank you very much.
Chair, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I tried to read this California Fire Code, and, it's overwhelming, you're right. So my question is, do you see that it conflicts in any way with the limited density owner-built rural dwelling ordinance that we have?
It does not, because I made sure that when we did that limited density, that we included the items that would be a part of that. Especially when you get into the residential side of things, the residential code really, like I was kind of saying, has a lot of those fire requirements already. So it's not anything that we're gonna do that then's gonna put us backwards in terms of anything that we've already done.
Okay, perfect.
So it builds on the existing.
Exactly.
Perfect, thank you.
Do we need to make any other updates to county code with the inclusions of these two codes, or will everything nest neatly underneath these?
There is one more that I need to look into, and it's called the California Historical Building Code, that is also a part of our Title 24 list. So that one could be coming, but these two right now are the big ticket items.
Thank you. Can we open it up to public comment? Any public comment in the room? Any public comment on Zoom?
Tom?
Good evening, Mr. Commissioner, members of the commission. Tom Belenko, Douglas City. I want to echo Bella's comments from the beginning of these three items, and just especially on this item, which seems kind of routine. It is just really a breath of fresh air to see a building official in the room talking about stuff, making recommendations, bringing things into the public forum. It just, I'm very happy to see that. I certainly encourage you to adopt this. I think it's necessary. It's kudos to the department, Cody especially, and to staff. Glad to see this. I hope this is a trend that we'll see continued. There's a lot going on in the building code, so it's nice when we have the opportunity to weigh in and see it, that sausage made in front of us. So anyway, appreciate it. I hope this passes. And again, I welcome this trend.
Thank you, Mr. Blanco. Okay, so we have no other comments on Zoom. I bring it back to the commission for a motion and discussion, please.
So I will move that the Planning Commission adopt resolution PC 2025-07 to adopt a California Environmental Quality Act CEQA determination that the project is categorically exempt from further environmental review under CEQA guidelines section 15268, ministerial project exemption, and recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the updated amendments be passed to include the California Fire Code and the California Green Building Code.
I'll second.
So I do have one concern that I would like to discuss, and that's, so with the Manuelo, the model water efficiency landscaping element, I just have a slight concern that there could be conflicts with the California Fire Code. And so I would just request that if there are any points in Firewise landscaping versus Manuelo landscaping, that the California Fire Code would be used to supersede the Manuelo standards.
Do you want to make that as an amendment to my motion? Or?
I think Bella would like to comment, and then we can.
I think that like when it comes down to it, when we look at the two different code sections that may be in conflict, which, oh yeah, we should have legal weigh in, and we could meet with legal internally to make sure that we're making the appropriate move. It just depends on specific language sometimes. But it wouldn't be the first time that two different state agencies have created laws that conflict with one another. So we'll work through it.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? or do we want to vote? So how about a vote?
Chair Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Flights, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harper, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passed per recommendation of staff.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to reports and announcements. Planning commissioners, anybody have any reports?
If I may, Chair.
I was going to say, I'd like to report that Commissioner McIntosh, I welcome back into the fold. I know you've been out in the cold, so thank you very much for stepping up and being a pillar of the community.
Thank you for that. If I may, Chair, I'd like to add that, yeah, I apologize for not being present at my first meeting, but I had a family experience. I had a significant personal circumstance that made it necessary for us to take time away together for social and emotional well-being of our loved ones. And so I will definitely be at the next Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you. Family first. Any other commissioner reports?
Yes, so the Weaverville Architectural Review Committee did meet. I was unavailable to attend, but we are continuing to move forward to identify pre-approved colors for the historic district to help support faster improvements with the repainting and such of the historic buildings within downtown Weaverville. And we're continuing to work on our educational campaign. And there also has been a new proposal for banners on the light poles. So we may see that some of that moving forward shortly. Another item is that speaking with our Miss Bella Hedke, we wish her the best in her next adventure, and we appreciate everything that has been brought to the Planning Commission and all the hard work that you've done for the County of Trinity. And just, it's been a delight to work with you, and there'll be big shoes to fill. And we look forward to seeing what you do for other districts.
Except that you're really not allowed to leave.
But I also would like to introduce the idea that we look at having the planning department work with Trinity County OES to continue and move forward with the printing of map books for the volunteer fire departments with addressing updates. So in talking about the tiny house movement, the tiny house construction and how quickly that could proceed, and the addressing on it, that with the Trinity County Resource Conservation District, they're currently funding those map updates with grants, and then any additional map books are usually paid for by the VFDs to do. And it was discussed that that may better be hosted under Trinity County OES, and that the could also increase the frequency of which the map books are printed and updated, just because the addressing updates may increase in frequency and provide then better resources to our first responders.
Thank you very much. For myself, thank you, Ms. Hedke, for all your hard work. I think you've been an asset, absolutely. Fair seas and following winds on your new endeavors. And then I would love to see Mr. Smith be a permanent fixture here. I thought the information he was able to provide to us and obviously shows his dedication on the items that he presented to the commission today, where his heart is, and it's definitely in the community and the betterment of our community moving forward. So I would welcome you back at any further commission meetings. Thank you very much.
I have one more go back.
Absolutely.
So there's also an additional idea that we could discuss and potentially take action on at a future meeting. The idea would be to add a alternate planning commissioner to our board, which would add a 6th member. which would not vote unless one member of us was absent, but would participate in all of our meetings as available. And so that would allow us to have a tiebreaker if we were 4 people again at a meeting in the future. Other jurisdictions have this individual in place. And so it's just something for us to consider as to if it would be a financial endeavor that we would like to ask the county to view, and how to work on that. So would there be a rotation if the individual would come from different districts, or if it would be more of a best candidate and a member at large representing the county style of representation? So that's, if we have need for it in the future, something that we could also consider.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? So can we move on to the Deputy Director of Community Development report, please?
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. I have done this far too often in the 3 years that I've been here, and that is have to say farewell to a planner. 1 per year. That's kind of the turnover rate. And again, tonight, this is Bella's last Planning Commission meeting, and I don't have the words. And when I wrote the letter of recommendation for you to seek different employment in other places, I put everything in there that I had to say, I think. We don't keep good people. We let good people fly and do what their heart really wants to do. So yes, I have a heavy heart. And when I wrote that, I had a heavy heart then as well. But we don't hold people back. And so fly, follow your heart, onward and upward, bigger and better things. The job posting has been flying for a week. I did inquire about it a couple of days ago, and I was told we have 5 applicants so far. 4 of them are qualified with either degree or specific experience in planning. I don't know that that's really going to get us to where we're at with Bella, but just as a way of saying thank you to her, I would like to defer the rest of my time to her so that she could speak.
Thank you very much.
We on? No, we're dead. I think I might have died. That's all we got.
That means you can't leave. You have to stay now.
It's a sign.
Yeah. So I was gonna say here, but you beat me to it. But this is, with mixed emotions. This is my last planning commission meeting. My last day with the county will be May 8th. My partner and I are pursuing other career opportunities in other areas that will also be closer to family. So there's different added bonuses to what our next step is. As some of you may know, I was born and raised here. I was born a block away from this building. So it's pretty special to be able to come back here. My parents left when I was in college, and I knew in my heart that I wasn't done yet. So I came back, and it was a very meaningful, challenging, eye-opening experience to work for this institution for 7 years. I've lived in Weaverville, I've lived in Douglas City, I've lived in Lewiston, I've had beautiful moments in Hayfork. And I'm just really thankful for what I got here and who I met and the moments that I made. And in that, Angel's not on camera. It's okay. But, Angel is our new assistant planner. She's not expected to fill my shoes by any means. But I just wanted to kind of give her a proper introduction and let you guys know, as well as the public, that I have full faith in her ability to do this job and this career. She's shown quite quickly that she's good-natured and that she cares. I think she'll integrate into the community quite well, and that's really important for the success of a planner, because you really need to know the pulse of the people that you're working for. her professional experience. She has a bachelor in horticulture and she has a master's in environmental science. And I truthfully believe that that fits the planning profession. Planners come from a variety of backgrounds. But we really just have a set of technical and soft skills and emphasis on soft skills that allow us to do the job well. And I wanted to thank Debbie and Ed for their consistent support and resiliency. We wouldn't have accomplished as much as we have without the full team. We may see one person on the mic, but many people go into put effort into an item for it to be able to get where it goes. And I'm proud of their work and our work every single day, every single week, every single month. Some days feel like they're 5 years, but we get through them together. And a lot of what we do, the public doesn't see, but they will benefit from it. The people in our department are there because they care and they want to be there. It's not for any other reason in my mind, because it's just too difficult of a job. You'd leave if you had other intentions. And for the commissioners, I kind of just wanted to leave a statement that to remember to make your decisions based on relevant facts and substantial evidence, and to try to be aware when your decisions are being led by fear-based assumptions. So just think of that in mind. I know we're all humans, but the job really is to protect the health, welfare, and safety of all people. And often that is directly related to the economic development of a community. Yeah, with that, I just wanted to thank you guys. It's been challenging and wonderful and wild, and I have full faith that the department will continue in a positive fashion. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hedke. Congratulations. Thank you. If there's nothing else, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.